everyone. Welcome to this week's conversation with Dr. Steve and Ned about the body and how to fix, protect, or maintain it using outside-the-box alternative solutions. If you're a big fan of the pharmaceutical or surgical approach, you are so in the wrong place. Because on this podcast, we're not going to be pushing the conventional medicine methods or way of thinking about health. For this week's inaugural episode of Body Chat, we'll be chatting about why would anyone want to become a chiropractor? You'll get to know my brother Dr. Steve and Ned a little better and find out about what happened in the earlier years of his life that brought him down the path to where he is now. Me? I'm the older brother, Ron Ned, and I'm a retired Twin Cities chiropractor currently helping people buy and sell homes in the Tampa Bay and Los Angeles areas, while Steve has a thriving chiropractic practice in the Clearwater area of Tampa Bay, Florida. In the future episodes of this podcast, we're going to chat about all sorts of topics related to health, nutrition, exercise, just about everything having to do with the body. You're always welcome to listen in, but don't forget that neither of us is giving you health advice here. So don't rush off to do something we mentioned without either checking with your doctor first or seeing Dr. Steve and Ned as a patient at his office. Welcome to Body Chat. Good afternoon, Steve.
Good afternoon, Ron.
All right, so this is the initial episode, so I'm excited about this. And we're going to get a lot of background information on you. Some of it is going to be really helpful to people, and some of it is going to probably be embarrassing, but that's okay. They'll just get to know you that much better. So the first question I'm going to ask you has nothing to do with chiropractic. I want people to get an idea of who you are. And one of the stories that I remember you told me that really epitomizes it, the non-professional doctor side, was when Mom and Dad were selling our house back in Cleveland. You were in, was it your last year of high school?
Correct.
And weren't thrilled about the fact that you were going to be having to move away from all of your friends that you went to high school with all those years. So why don't you tell everybody how you approached that?
As you know, we lived in Cleveland, specifically South Euclid, an eastern suburb, and we had a 2-story bungalow house. And I got the whole second floor after you and our sister Arlene were out of there. And when people came by the house to look at it, it was my job to tell them about the second floor. Mom and Dad foolishly trusted me with that job. Mm-hmm. And I made sure that when those people left, that there was no possibility they were going to buy the house. And how I did that was I just told like a little white lie that there was a ghost in the attic. You know, he wasn't an evil ghost, but he would make noise every so often, sometimes wake me up, and not a big deal. My mom and dad didn't know about it, of course, because they never were up there. So it was funny watching the expression on their faces, because they would just be like, they're all excited about the house. And then they would just be like, oh. And then they'd go downstairs and Mom and Dad would talk to them. And then when they left the house, Mom and Dad would say, what did you say to them? They were all excited. And then they were just, something changed. I said, I just told them the truth.
Okay. So did you ever tell Mom and Dad what you did before they passed away?
Yeah, that was one of my many confessions to Mom before she passed away, yes.
Oh, okay, good. Did she laugh at least?
Not at first, but yeah, and then she totally understood, and everything worked out as it should, because they did find the perfect house for them in Cape Coral.
Okay, good. All right, so now we're going to move from that into the professional side. So what was your first exposure to chiropractic and or nutrition?
Well, as far as chiropractic, I remember very young going to the chiropractor with our parents. I actually don't remember my first treatment, but I was always fascinated watching them get adjusted. As far as nutrition, gosh, I remember as far back as when I started eating hard food, and there was always a cup with vitamins and minerals on the table at each meal that Mom and Dad would put out for us. And back then, it really wasn't common practice to take supplements. Mm-mm. But our parents were way ahead of the times, because they were self-taught with learning about nutrition from Adele Davis books. And I know they talked about watching Jack LaLanne on TV. Mm-hmm. By the way, did you know that Jack LaLanne was a chiropractor?
I think you told me about that, but I hadn't known before then.
Yeah. And of course, they had prevention magazines, which they kept the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were very fortunate to have that upbringing.
That's very true. Yes, I remember they got into nutritional supplements right around when you were born.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during the years when you were growing up, what people and events were most influential in getting you to recognize that chiropractic and nutritional supplementation are valid ways to treat conditions and improve your health?
Well, there were 3 people for chiropractic and 3 people for nutrition. As far as chiropractic, my first real exposure was with our family chiropractor, Dr. Richard Toth. And he was out of Northfield, Ohio, which is about 20 miles south of where we used to live. And I just really thought he was a really nice guy, great doctor. He did a really good job with us, and he was definitely influential in my decision later on. Secondly, our former brother-in-law, Dr. Rick Brown, who went to Logan College of Chiropractic and graduated in 1981, a year before you did. He worked with Dr. Toth after he graduated, and I remember he examined me and took x-rays. He spent like 2 hours with me because he wanted to learn every test and practice on me. And what was interesting is he found that I actually had scoliosis. And at that time, I was 15 years old, and I was like, what? And he says, yeah, can you demonstrate to me what type of activities that you do as far as sports and leisure? And I said, oh, yeah, sure. I like to bowl, and I like to play racquetball, and I like to hit tennis balls and throw footballs and baseballs. He goes, okay, stop. He says, don't you ever use the left side of your body? And I said, yeah, I guess not. And he goes, well, what you've done is you've overdeveloped the muscles on the right side of your back, and it's pulling your spine that way, and you have a curve. And what he did, what was interesting, he had me do a test called Adams bending test. And as you know, that's a test to see if you have either a permanent structural scoliosis or if you have one that's due to tight muscles.
Did you say what scoliosis was earlier?
Curvature of the spine.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when I did that test, I bent forward to touch my toes and my back straightened out. And he says, well, this is good because this is something that's based on muscles and it can be corrected. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so what he did is he put me on a program with exercise and regular chiropractic adjustments. I think it was like twice a week for about 9 months. And after that time, when he re-examined me and took the x-rays again, my spine straightened out. And that really made a huge impact on me as far as, wow, this really works. Oh, yeah. The third one is you.
Oh.
Yeah. Even though you teased and picked on me like older brothers typically do, I still respected you and was very, very proud of what you were doing. And that really made a big impact on my affinity for chiropractic. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. That's very cool. So those are probably the 3 people that had the biggest impact. Now, were there any specific events other than the thing with Rick where he found out about the scoliosis, where it kind of solidified that this was the direction you wanted to go?
Yeah, believe it or not, before that, when I was 14, while both you and Rick were still at Logan, something miraculous actually happened to me. Now, as you know, the weather up in Cleveland, you can go to bed and it's 70 degrees and you wake up the next morning and it's snowing. So I left the window open one night. What happened was it got real cold overnight and my neck just froze up because it was just freezing in there and I couldn't move. And I developed what was called wry neck or torticollis. And I mean, it was so painful that if I tried to turn my head, it felt like somebody was stabbing me with a knife or tying knots with my muscles. And yeah, and I was like so disappointed because it was the most important day of my life so far. It was the day of our Little League baseball playoff championship game.
Okay.
And so I had to call the manager in tears that, I wasn't going to be able to make it. And I was disappointed. I was our starting second baseman, leadoff hitter, all-star, the whole works. And so Dad said, okay, well, let's take you to the chiropractor and let's see what happens. So he literally carried me down the stairs holding my neck. I was just writhing in pain. It was just awful. And put me in the car and drove me to Dr. Toth's. And he did an adjustment on me, and I felt pretty good when we left. But by the time I got to the car, it was totally out again. So Dad brought me back in, and he did like a little therapy, some electrical stim and heat, and then he adjusted me again. And this time it was like amazing. I was like, the pain was completely gone. So Dad kind of had a hunch something good was going to happen. He brought my uniform. He said, hurry up, change, let's get to the game. And we did. We got there just in time. And I got 3 hits. In the final inning, the top of the inning, I scored the go-ahead run. And then the final out of the game, I was playing second base. Somebody hit a line drive. I jumped as high as I possibly could, caught the ball at the top of my mitt, and I did a flip, landed on my feet, and we won the game.
Wow.
I got carried off the field, and then after the game, we went and got ice cream, and I told Dad, I said, hey, I know what I want to be when I grow up. Well, he's thinking big league baseball player, and that was the year that Nolan Ryan became the first $1 million baseball player. I said, no, I want to be a chiropractor. And he goes, oh, okay, that's okay too.
That's great. All right. So then your decision was based on your experience, not the fact that Rick had done it or I had done it or anything like that. It might have influenced you, but it was really your own personal experience with what chiropractic did for you.
That's right.
Very good. And then what people and events during your chiropractic college years most shaped the way that you practice? Because now you've decided you want to be a chiropractor. You have a reason for doing it. You start going to chiropractic school, was it 87?
86.
86. So between 86 and 89, when you graduate, I'm sure as you went along, there were a lot of different ways that you could have gone in the way that you were going to practice and what you were going to do, whether you were going to do nutrition or just chiropractic or add in things like acupuncture and applied kinesiology techniques. So along the way, where did those things start to firm up as far as which way you were going to go?
Good question. The first one was our AK class, which was nicknamed Magic Class, as you know. Yeah, with Dr. Bert Haneke. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed that. And then he and his wife taught a 100-hour certification course for applied kinesiology. Mm-hmm. And I took that too, and it really built a nice foundation for that.
Now, for people out there who aren't familiar with what that is, can you briefly describe what applied kinesiology is?
Yeah, it's a system where you use muscle testing, not only to test very specific muscles for weakness and imbalance, but it is used to also test for things like allergies, nutritional supplements, deficiencies, and various other things.
All right. So kinesiology, kinetics has to do with motion. So applied kinesiology is using motion, which is the movement of the muscles or testing of the muscles and applying it to determine what's going on with a person's health.
Yeah, and what needs to be done to restore balance to the body.
Okay, good. So then you were saying that there was a 100-hour class or seminar in applied kinesiology that you decided to take.
Yeah, it was through the International Kinesiology Association.
Okay.
After that, I did a seminar with Dr. Wally Schmidt, who, believe it or not, is also from our sister's hometown, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And I was just really impressed with his vast knowledge of nutrition and biochemistry. He was a genius, and he made a really big impact on me as far as pursuing nutrition more. Then after that, I took my acupuncture certification course with Dr. John Sunderledge, which I think you did too.
I did.
And as you recall, he was very fun, enlightening. Mm-hmm. And what was great was him going over his miraculous case histories, including getting paraplegics to stand up and walk again and things like that. Mm-hmm. And he also turned me on to sushi and sake. So I'll give him an acknowledgement for that too.
Okay, good.
And finally, Dr. Arlen Four, the co-founder of Activator Methods Chiropractic Technique, which is the world's most widely used low-force instrument adjusting technique. And this is the 50th year anniversary, by the way.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. When I was at Logan, I was vice president of the Activator Club. I was also proficiency rated as a student. Mm-hmm. And meeting Dr. Four was just a thrill and honor. He's probably done more to build our profession than just about anybody else I can think of, especially on the research side.
That's correct.
And
I got to go see the practice up in, was it Red Wing? Up in Minnesota. That was the Lee Four Chiropractic office. And that was when Dr. Lee was part of the thing. And eventually he retired and Dr. Ford took on all of the responsibilities, but I actually got to go over there and watch them treat people, and they were doing Activator, and that was back in early 1980s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I became advanced proficiency rated my first year in practice, and I've kept that status since. Mm-hmm. And then in 2006, Dr. Four actually called me and asked me to be an instructor. And I became an associate clinical instructor for Activator Methods and have been helping teach that since then each year in Orlando.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Were there any other people or events during chiropractic college that shaped the way that you practice?
Yeah, you did too. I got to see your practice in Burnsville, Minnesota. And then also when you became a consultant, that was important to me because, in school, we mainly learned the technical aspect of being a chiropractor, but we didn't get a whole lot of training on the business side.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you became a consultant, you became my consultant. And that was very, very important because there's two sides to running a chiropractic office, the technical and the business side, of course.
That's correct. And you have to run the business side as well as possible to be able to help as many people as possible.
That's right.
All right, great. Now tell us about your first practice. Now, why did you decide to practice under someone else? And what did you gain from those first years in practice?
I got my license in July of 1990. And a month after that, I opened my first practice with Dr. Charles Dugan. I shared his office with him in Fort Myers.
Mm-hmm.
And our mom was my first secretary and assistant.
Mm-hmm.
I worked the days he wasn't there on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And what was nice about that was there was no overhead. It was a percentage-based agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gained experience as a practitioner from him, following him, as well as a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And I was grateful to start like that because there was no capital that I needed for equipment. And obviously I had my student loans I had to pay off.
Right.
Dr. Dugan was also a Logan grad and genius with nutrition. In fact, he helped me overcome chronic fatigue syndrome, which was lingering from when I had mono Epstein-Barr virus, and found out that my adrenals were exhausted from all the stress of getting through school and taking my boards and all that.
Mm-hmm.
He was also influential in extending our mother's life, who had scleroderma. And she wasn't even still supposed to be around at that time. Cleveland Clinic gave her 5 years to live in 1984. That's why we moved to Florida. And
now, for people that aren't aware of what scleroderma is, can you give a brief description of what that condition does to somebody?
Yeah, it's an autoimmune disorder, and it has several aspects to it. Sclera means hardening or calcification, and derma means connective tissue or skin. And literally, it means the body's turning to stone. Our mom was diagnosed at the Cleveland Clinic in 1984. And again, they gave her 5 years to live. And she became my first patient when I got out of school. I know you helped actually diagnose that too. In fact, you recommended her to get it confirmed at Cleveland Clinic.
And when I was in college, I remember looking it up in the Merck manual, if you remember that little book, and figuring out with all the various symptoms that she had that was probably the condition she had, and they hadn't been able to diagnose it for years. But yes, eventually they did get that correctly diagnosed, and she'd had that going on for probably 15 years at that point.
Yeah, it was likely due to her being a hairdresser, being around chemicals all her life, and not, back then they didn't always wear masks and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
She ended up living 21 years. She was with me my first, I believe it was 14 years in practice, and she was an inspiration to all of our patients.
Yes. Now, you were talking about how Dr. Dugan was responsible for her living a lot longer. What type of things was he doing that was helping her out so much?
Well, it was primarily using nutrition, finding things that she needed to detoxify, things to help reverse the calcification in her body. One of the big things we found that really helped her was a real good source of magnesium, because magnesium and calcium work together and they kind of keep each other in balance. And what we found was that she was really deficient in magnesium. In fact, she used to get kidney stones when she was younger, and that was the thing that cured her kidney stones. So that, amongst other things, and of course, I was always seeking more information from experts in nutrition, and a lot of things that I learned along the way were real helpful. Later on, we got an infrared sauna. She would use that, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, plus the cold laser. That was very helpful, because one of the things that happens with scleroderma, one of the soft tissues that hardens, is the esophagus, or the tube that goes from the mouth down to the stomach. And at the opening of the stomach, it would harden so much and shrink so much that it was maybe the size of a dime or a nickel. And all the food that you eat goes down in there. And her saliva was kind of dried up too. So she would try to eat. It wouldn't get moistened properly. It would go down. It would stick, and she'd start choking, and she'd try to drink water, and she would spit it up, and it was very uncomfortable. And I remember you started treating her with the cold laser on a regular basis, and she would have to go to a doctor. I think it was a gastroenterologist every 3 months, if I remember correctly. And they would put these glass tubes down her throat to stretch out the esophagus, the opening into the stomach, so that the food wouldn't stick. And after you started treating her regularly with the cold laser, she went in, and the doctor looked down there and said he doesn't know what's going on because there's more healing going on, and it's softening. And it got to the point where instead of going every 3 months, she went every 6 months, or if it was every 6 months, she went every year. So that was a very, very key point in keeping her doing well and healthy.
I agree. Yeah, I got my first laser back in 1999, and her doctor, Dr. O'Malley, who's still in practice, actually started referring me patients because he was so impressed with what he saw as far as, the anatomy of her esophagus was drastically improved. And, one other thing that we did was he had her drink whole leaf aloe, which would heal up the tissue, reduce the inflammation, reduce the scar tissue. And I also put her on parotid to help her salivary glands produce more saliva.
Very good. All right. So now back to Dr. Dugan. So you were with Dr. Dugan. You learned a lot about nutrition from him and how to properly treat people and get results with a whole variety of different things going on with people's bodies. And this is Body Chat. So then at a certain point, you decided to go off into your own practice. So when did that occur?
Okay, so I started in there in August of 1990, and by about 2 years later, I decided, I'm doing well enough. I think it's time for me to have my own practice. In December of 1992, we moved to my first private office in a little plaza across from the VA clinic in Fort Myers at Winkler and Metro.
That was 25 years ago from this month.
I know. That was a great location because it was near a hospital, it was near the main mall, and also down the road from the airport. And what was really cool, it was walking distance from the apartment I lived in.
I remember that. The one with the train in the back.
Yeah. My cousin Vinny train.
That's right. So you started your first office in Fort Myers. Now, what techniques and methods were you using during those initial years of practice, both with Dr. Dugan and with your initial own office?
Okay, well, of course, we've already covered activator methods, chiropractic technique. But I also did and still do diversified, which is the standard manual therapy that most chiropractors do. Of course, applied kinesiology, which we've also spoken of, as well as acupuncture and nutrition. And when I moved to the new location, I bought a manual traction table, which was nice because it would help loosen people up before I did adjustments. And I also had my own X-ray and processor there.
Oh, I remember that. All right. Any other methods or techniques?
Well, as time went on, my 8th year in practice, I decided to detox the office, so I got rid of the X-ray and processor.
Okay.
And in its place, I put in an infrared sauna and ion foot baths, which I still use. I added to my nutrition training. Through the years, I trained with Dr. Dick Versendahl, John Brimhall, and Jeffrey Bland. Now, Jeffrey Bland was a protege of Linus Pauling, who is the genius behind vitamin C. He won a Nobel Prize for that.
Yeah, for his research and for promoting the use of it in helping everything from common colds to detoxifying the body.
That's right. And Jeffrey Bland was easily the most brilliant nutritional expert I've ever known. And he's one of the pioneers of functional medicine. Dr. Brimhall, well, from him, I learned how to do percussion myofascial release. I have an instrument called a percussor, and it's used to vibrate the muscle and the soft tissue of the body to break up knots and release trigger points and things like that.
So that's what myofascial release is?
Yes.
Okay.
And he introduced me to cold laser, also known as low-level laser therapy. and as well as a very effective allergy desensitization procedure similar to NAET, Nambudrapad Allergy Elimination Technique, named after the doctor, Nambudrapad.
Okay.
Yes. I enhanced my laser training with other laser experts, including Dr. Jeffrey Spencer, who was Lance Armstrong's chiropractor at all 7 Tour de France victories, as well as working with Tiger Woods and the Group U2.
Okay.
And about 15 years ago, I got certified as a veterinary chiropractor, so I can do animal adjustments and also use the laser on dogs, cats, horses, and even birds.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll do a podcast on that in the future.
Absolutely.
In 2014, I attained the status of diplomate from the American Chiropractic Board of Sports Physicians, joining what is still now only about 400 doctors that have ever reached this. And it's because I love working with elite athletes, including professionals. I have all my career, myself being an athlete too. So,
right. So that includes also like high school athletes and college athletes and the non-professional amateur softball team type athletes too.
Yeah, weekend warriors.
Exactly. Okay, great. So those are all the different major techniques and modalities that you've been adding over the years.
Yeah, and even last month, I added a computerized spinal decompression table that's outstanding for neck and low back disc disorders. And we've already been seeing really amazing results with that.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's probably another topic we'll need to do a podcast on more thoroughly.
Definitely.
Now, when it comes to your practice philosophy regarding treatment, what is that?
Well, results are the bottom line as a practitioner. And my purpose has always been to help as many people as possible, effectively and efficiently as possible. I don't have a cookbook approach because everybody's different. I just don't have everybody coming in 3 times a week for extended time periods. I mean, some need that type of intensive care, especially after they've had an injury, such as a sports injury or an auto accident or a work injury. Oftentimes when that occurs, the muscles or ligaments get stretched or torn. And it creates an unstable physical condition that requires intensive care. And so the visits are bunched together so that healing is speeded up. But more importantly, everything heals correctly when you're able to do that so that things stay balanced, centered, and aligned.
And so you go over what the person needs and give them the different options of care that they can go, and it's up to them to make their decision.
That's right.
All right. So then your treatment plans not only include the chiropractic treatments and nutrition and things like acupuncture and cold laser therapy, but also when appropriate, you have a program of exercise to stabilize or strengthen certain things to help prevent things in the future from occurring again.
That's right. And then it becomes more of a team effort.
That's very smart. Now, why is nutrition such an important part of your practice?
Well, for one, it's important because of the typical SAD diet that most people follow. The SAD stands for Standard American Diet.
Okay.
And even above that, more and more people are eating organic. They're eating gluten-free. They're eating lower carbs. But how do they know what soil that the food was grown in if it was nutrient dense? For example, there was a study done and it showed that spinach today has 1/30 of the content of iron that it had 100 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. That's probably why we don't see Popeye on TV much anymore.
Okay.
It probably looks like olive oil now. Supplements are aptly named because they supplement your diet with what you're likely not getting. And what I like to do is use a gas station analogy with my patients and tell them, listen, you have 3 options at the pump. You have 87, 89, and 93. If you have a high performance car like a Lamborghini, you're going to want to use 93 octane, obviously, because it's a high performance vehicle. Well, think of your body like that. And most of the food that we eat is 87 octane food. And so think of supplements like octane boosters. I mean, they can't take the place of food, but they improve the quality of it and give us what we typically aren't getting.
And then there's the aspect that your body runs on fuel and it builds and rebuilds itself using certain building blocks, and those building blocks come from the food that it takes in. And if it's not getting everything that it needs, it can't build or rebuild or repair itself. So that's another aspect of the importance of nutrition when it comes to health.
That's right. And, some people have genetic weaknesses that require more specific nutrients than the average person. They may have a medical condition that requires more. You mentioned vitamin C earlier that helps, as well as zinc with colds and flus. And, we have great supplements. We have one that's a special form of calcium that helps with bone density issues, including osteoporosis and healing bone fractures. And we have others that help with ligament sprains and muscle conditions and pain and inflammation. Even things like asthma, digestive disorders, and many other conditions can be helped through nutritional supplements.
And it's probably better that people approach things that way than going to the establishment medical doctors who would want them to take specific drugs, which then create other problems. But we won't go into
unless it's a life-sustaining thing that they have to take, insulin for diabetes.
Absolutely.
Most of these conditions can actually be helped first through nutrition, and then if that doesn't quite do the trick, then they can always take something stronger.
Absolutely. So now, before we end, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, I just want to say I'm really excited about us doing this, and I'm looking forward to covering more health topics in the future with you. This is really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be great for your patients and also for people in the local community to be able to get information like this and be able to go back and listen to it over and over again, or find information when they're searching for something and be able to get it quickly.
That's right.
Now, if somebody listening to this wants to get more information about you or your practice, how can they get that? Is there a website they can go to?
Yes, our website is www.neddchiro.com, neddchiro.com.
Okay, good. And then is there a phone number that they can call your office if they want to speak to someone, get some questions answered, or possibly even come in for an appointment?
Yes, it's 727-467-0775.
Okay, good. And I'll make sure to put both of those in the podcast notes. And then what is the address of the office?
It's 1221 Cleveland Street, Clearwater, Florida, 33755.
And it's practically next door to Nature's Food Patch at the corner of Missouri and Cleveland Streets in Clearwater.
Yes.
And what are your office hours?
We're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 12:30 and 2 to 6. Tuesday and Thursday from 2 to 6. And Saturday from 10 to 2.
Excellent. All right, Steve, thanks for taking the time today to share all of this with us, even the unexpected at the beginning. And we'll get on to our next topics. And one of them that's going to be coming up very soon is diets and weight loss for after the holidays.
Sounds good.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the first episode of the Body Chat podcast. We both really appreciate your time and your attention. We want to provide you with interesting and informative episodes each week, and if you have a topic you'd like us to cover or any questions you'd like us to answer, send an email to us at info@bodychatpodcast.com. That's info@bodychatpodcast.com. Next week, we're going to chat about 5 unconventional ways to eliminate back pain that medical doctors won't tell you about. And we have an upcoming episode about a better way to lose weight and keep it off, to help with those reminders of the holidays that are still hanging around on your hips or your waist. So don't miss out on those. To make sure you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes, subscribe to the Body Chat podcast now on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or Spotify. See you next week.